All right, everybody. Welcome to our September Mallets and Manuscripts meeting. Apologies for the delay in scheduling. It has been a busy semester, and yeah, life happens. Hannah and I decided that today we're going to talk about a couple of our own pieces of music. I think I'm going to start things off. With a new piece that I wrote, as well as a piece that I wrote for Hannah, and Hannah recorded very well, and it's a great chart. And then Hannah's got a piece that she wrote for me to play, and a quartet that is banging. So we're gonna listen to that too, talk about it. Cool. All right. So Hannah and Tregvi, should I start with Flugel vibe or Mesmerism? What's the vote? Each get one vote.
Push everything like against the.
Let's go with the new piece.
All right, sick, great, cool. So Flugel vibe. I shared the score with Hannah, and I think all of you have it now. If you're watching this after the fact or you're on the call, I was really inspired by one of my favorite TV shows, King of the Hill. And Chuck Mangione makes like a series of appearances in King of the Hill across the entire series, and it's him voice acting and him playing flugelhorn. And every time he plays anything, whether it's the national anthem or taps or whatever, he always ends up playing his like 1976 hit "Feels So Good." And so like the original intent was to write a piece for me and my old roommate at Ohio State, Alex Sanzo, for vibraphone, because I have a vibraphone, and then flugelhorn, and make it all riffs on "Feels So Good." And it just did not work because it's like a pop tune, and like I am limited in my vocabulary, and to the extent that I felt like I could take quoting that piece, it just got old really fast. So Flugel vibe actually comes from another duet that I wrote for vibraphone and melodica originally. And I just like literally copy and pasted the melodica part, and any spot that had more than one note, I was like, all right, I got to pick one. And I like trimmed it down, added another section after talking to Hannah and being like, hey, this part is cool, you should expand it. Yeah. And I recently played it on a faculty recital at Fayetteville State, and we're going to give the like more official premiere at UTRGV in 2 weeks from 2 weeks from today. Oh my God. Yeah. So it's going to be fun. So we're going to take a little listen to this. I've got the score too. And you guys probably have it as well, but yeah, Flugel vibe. It's a fun little chart. Here's our little recital recording. This is me and my friend Jack Smid, who is our trumpet professor at Fayetteville State. Yeah. So then the next section is kind of more 16th notey with the just kind of accompaniment in the vibraphone. And the flugelhorn goes through some of the opening material at like a faster rate. And then there's this part where it switches back to the vibe mallets. It's kind of like a little interlude where, I don't know, the vibe and flugelhorn reverse roles. I don't know. I didn't feel super creative on like the name for this piece. And I'm still not 100% sold on it, but I think like it kind of gets to the point of like what I was trying to do is like create something that's like kind of 50-50 between the two. So I feel okay with sticking with it. But then yeah, you switch back to mallet. And then there's like a return to the opening material and kind of fades out the same way. I'm also realizing that two of the pieces I've written, because I haven't written many things, at least two of them end the same way with unison dotted half notes. So I don't know if that is just something I'm obsessed with at this point. But yeah, it's kind of a commonality that I noticed after the fact. Yeah, give me 1 second. I got to go let a cat into this room. Get in here. There you go. Yeah, so that's Flugel Vibe. I feel like there was something else I was going to say about it. But yeah, what do you guys, any thoughts, any impressions on it?
What does the X mean on the note head with the bees? Is that dead stroke?
Let's see. I might not have given you the newest form of the score. The X note heads, they're supposed to be with the, originally I'd intended on like the all of the like 16th note, 7th chord kind of stuff where the tempo picks up to be with mallets, like very soft mallets. Because originally, like I started writing the vibe part by improvising on my dinosaur vibraphone over here. Don't judge my mess. And what I did was I turned the tremolo and like all the effects up really high, so it was very washy, very like and I used the Mallotech practice mallets. They get no articulation, so it was all tone coming through and just like a wall of sound, and I really liked that. So then to like counter it, I thought about using like the shaft of the mallet, but then I was like, oh, I really hate this like transition to like have to like lean down and do that. And the flugelhorn like naturally has kind of like a stuffy sound to it. And so it was like mushy on top of like stuffy brass sound. And it just like didn't, we were having trouble like playing together. So I was like, let me just like switch to hot rods and see what that sounds like. And I like tried it with hot rods, like with the wood side. And I was like, okay, this is okay. And then I was like, I wonder. And then I flipped them over and played with the rubber backs. And I really liked that because it's like, still articulate, but like a little bit like plastic mallet or like a rubber mallet instead, but like a little bit harsher. So yeah. So the X's originally were going to be like shaft of the mallet on the bar. And then I abandoned that and just never fixed it because yeah. So
That's cool though. I didn't
Yeah.
know about the Maltech practice vibe or the practice mallets.
yeah, they're let's see if I can grab one without disturbing the cat in my lap right now. She's chilling. This is her place to be. You want the mallet? Yeah. She does. Yeah, they're like really soft and squishy, but like pillowy soft, like no core at all. So they're nice for like apartment living. I hate how big the mallet head is because it makes like accuracy on like a narrow vibe bar like really hard. And I don't feel like I'm like necessarily getting better as a result of that kind of practice. But it works in a pinch. So yeah. Yeah.
It's so nice to like actually get to hear this piece because I remember when you sent me the melodica version, first of all.
Yeah.
And then that like got put away, and then you're like, hey, actually I'm getting this back out again.
Yeah.
And I feel like between when you first asked me about the piece and you asked me about the piece the second time, I like my composition brain had like grown.
Yeah.
And so it's really cool like seeing that piece and how it has now been performed on flugelhorn.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about like issues you found during the rehearsal process, because you just mentioned one thing, but was there anything else that came up that you're like, oh, I wasn't aware this would be a problem?
Well, I've never written for wind instruments before, so that was like something that was really scary to me to begin with. Like when I was playing melodica, I was like, I can write anything because like you could just play like a piano, right? And it's not hard to skip and like leap and do this and that, or like you could figure it out. But with like when I switched to flugelhorn, I changed a bunch of. God dang it, Libby! Sorry. There's a sewing machine back here, so come on, get down. Oh, sorry, YouTube. Anyway, yeah. So when it switched to a brass instrument, I was like, okay, I've heard brass players complain about like, or not complain, but like voice that like playing a tritone, for instance, is like it probably isn't comfortable considering the way that their instrument works is like you blow and you move like by perfect fifths or perfect fourths or octaves, or once you get high enough, whatever. And I was like, okay, so if I'm gonna leap, it should be like a consonant leap most of the time, whether it's like a sixth or a fifth or an octave. Like I know that that is achievable. And like stepwise motion and chromaticism works. But like nothing too crazy. I don't know. I guess the thing that I was like most afraid of was like how fast can I push like a brass player to play? You know, because I've heard like a trumpet player play 16th notes before, like play a fast lick, but I'm like, I don't know what's like absurd and like what's like doable on the regular. So when I asked my buddy Jack, like we were playing a Joe Moore piece together anyway. And I told him about this piece, and he literally grabbed the flugelhorn and was like, "Do you want to just like read through your chart right now?" And I was like, "Sure." And Alex Sanzo had been, I think, like running through it a little bit in Texas, and he was like, "This isn't nothing here is like too terribly difficult. Like it's all doable." And I was like, "Okay, if something isn't, please just tell me, and I want to know why, and I want to fix it." So they're really like the answer is like nothing was really that bad, minus like, okay, I read rhythms differently than you do. Like this syncopation is like this rhythm was like da da dee da 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 dee da is like super easy for me to read in syncopation. Let me see if I can find the actual measure to show you. Like this was the thing that gave us the most grief in the rehearsal process was like rhythm. So I guess that's my answer to that question. If I could find where that was. Oh, here we go. Okay, let me just share my tab here. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. So measure 35. 1 and 3 and 2 and 3, 4 was like took some shedding. And now I realize I'm like, no, that is kind of hard to read. with the dotted quarter note, eighth note, that looks kind of stupid. But to me, I'm like, okay, if I like saw that and played it twice, like I would get it. But it was like making sure, I guess, like that vertical alignment of the rhythm was the biggest thing that we had to fix. But I learned like, okay, that little 30-second note, I was like, what's the best way to notate that? Like, can you articulate both of those notes? And he's like, I mean, sure, but like I'm not, because it's easier to do this, And I was like, okay, what's the best way to notate that? He's like, just slur it. So yeah, does that answer your question? All right.
Yeah, it does.
Cool. Yeah. It was fun. I liked writing for the wind instrument, although I'm like, I don't know how soon I'll do that again because it kind of scares me. But I was like, keep it simple, stupid, and like write something that you could put together in 2 days with your friend in Texas. And like that I don't have to shed a whole lot because it's not really that hard of a piece, but it's long. It fills up a decent chunk of time on like a recital program, and that's my philosophy is like give something like substantial. I don't know, like I'm cool with writing like a 4-minute long piece, but I'm also like if I'm gonna play it, I want it to like take up a decent amount of time so that I'm not having to program 9 pieces on a recital. Yeah. Any other like thoughts or questions about this chart? Yeah, it's I submitted it for publication. I'm gonna try and get another recording of it in a couple weeks, but yeah, we'll see where it ends up. Might just be one that's on a website somewhere, or just like stay shelved. We'll see. So, yeah, cool. I could talk about mesomerism too, if you want. Yeah, so mesomerism is the second piece I've ever written. And like, Hannah, I don't recall if like, so you wrote Broken Sweet for me, and then I was like, I want to write something for you. And you were looking for like a middle snare drum piece to do like a snare drum trio, right? Like a concert or Minute of News. Like you knew you wanted to play that, and you knew you wanted to do a rudimental. So you're like, I was like, cool. So like something weird in between that.
Yeah, I
And
think I
No,
said
go ahead.
something like, "Oh yeah, I want like a piece like Amazonia Dreaming from the Noel Snare Bug
Right.
by Ania Lockwood." Like, yeah.
Yeah. And I was like thinking about the Noble Snare book, and I think I have a couple of the volumes, and I was like fumbling through it, and I'm like, okay, I don't want to just like redo something that somebody else has done in the Noble Snare book. And I knew that I wanted it to be something that was like not really a snare drum solo, but the snare drum is like the center object, so it is a snare drum solo. And I had a bunch of gongs at home, and I was like, okay, cool, like let's make this about like the resonating like snare bed and flip it upside down so it has like some sort of like visual impact, and then figure out a way to incorporate and like just like test out what can you do with like an upside down snare drum and the like suspended gongs. So like I think I went into 125 in Ohio State in the percussion studio, and I just like did that for like 40 minutes, and I wrote a bunch of stuff down on a piece of paper. And I was like, okay, this is like centering on like the concept of just the big word resonance. And I was like, I'll like go off of that and just make this about like a resonating body surrounded by a bunch of other resonating bodies. But not make it is it the John Luther Adams is the mathematics of resonant bodies or something like that? Yeah. Um, I was like, so I can't steal that name and just call it like resonating or resonant body. So I like Googled scientific words for resonance and mesomerism came up as like a concept in chemistry where like two chemical compounds like share a formula but have different names or something like that. Let's see. It says in the program notes, it says, let's see. The second definition of mesomerism is the structural property of some molecules that a single formula cannot represent. So you need multiple formulas for like one object or for one thing. So like the idea of resonance is like sympathetic or like struck resonance within the piece. Yeah. So, and I don't think the term mesomerism is like really used all that much in chemistry anymore. So I felt like pretty comfortable co-opting it, and was kind of inspired by like Christopher Dean's use of like scientific concepts or physical or like concepts in physics as like either properties to like base composition on or just like for naming. So yeah, because this sensing the Coriolis force is like pretty profound in that way, I would say. The second marimba quartet. So yeah. Yeah, so it calls for at least 3 gongs. Hannah used 4 when you played it, and so did I, because there's like 3 suspended gongs over a snare drum, and then 1 off to the side that you play, not like a ride cymbal, but like muted, and more like articulate. And then you have the snare drum flipped over, and you have various. I think it's only just like 2 or 3 sticks that you use, right? Not a whole lot. Am I forgetting anything, Hannah?
1 second. Let me pull up the photo I have.
Oh, and you have to sing into the drums. That's another form of like resonating. So it's like there's like 3. Well, there's multiple resonating bodies. There's the gong, there's the snare drum, and then you're a resonating body, which is pretty sweet. So
Okay, I found the photo. In this photo, I have 1, 2. I think I have 3 different sticks.
okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Like a regular drumstick, probably like a timpani mallet, and then something else, like a swizzle maybe, or a drum set stick.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Cool. Yeah, so we'll listen now. I'll stop talking. And this one got like notationally is like pretty all over the place. So I'll pull up the score in a second, but we'll listen here first. Excuse me. Yeah, and so that effect there is to just press in and like apply pressure and release pressure to the snare head, just to create like a kind of like a vibrato sound. I feel like over the top the drum, like when you're playing it, it's like a pretty intense sound. But from like an audience perspective, it like you either hear it or you don't. At least that was my experience, like talking to other people. Like Joe Krieger was like, "Oh, I like that. Like that's a cool effect. I might steal that if you don't copyright it." And I was like, "Yeah, like I don't care." But other people were like, "I don't really hear it." And I'm like, "Oh no, that's hard to like get across." But Hannah does it really well on this video. So this is played really well, and I was like such a fantastic thing to collaborate with Hannah on. So yeah, and so the X's in the score, which we'll look at a little later, are for like this muted gong. Originally, I had like a wind gong suspended, and I was almost treating it like had like a really dry, like flat ride kind of sound. But the muted gong works nicely to kind of like contrast between the other gong sounds. The gongs that Hannah got to use for this too also sounded really good. So when I played this, my gongs sounded kind of like butt. So yeah. Anyway, that's a scientific term. So yeah, and then there's like a little bit of a right after this, there's like a more rhythmic section. Oh no, repeat. Here's the rhythmic section. So the next section is kind of a let me take you through as many different things you can do, like just on the snare drum as possible. So it cycles through like a quote unquote long roll into a closed buzz. You sing into the drum some more. There's a single stroke roll. I notated soft yell, which I had in mind for Hannah because of something she used to do at Ohio State when she was frustrated, like a certain sound. But like if you're playing it, like I don't care what soft yell is to you, whatever that means. And then like just a buzz roll and then yelling into the drum gradually, increasing in volume. So here it is. I love to see people's reactions when they hear that, or when I played this, my students were like, "That was something." And then there's some more singing with gongs, which is fun. Yeah, very cool. Wow, that sounded so narcissistic. Yeah, I also just realized in the score there's like this random thing that I never noticed before that I'm like, oh god, I don't even want to fix it because it's going to be a cool Easter egg now. But let me see if I can pull up the score here. I think this is it. And I'll also tell you about the art because why not? Oop, that's not what I meant to do. Open with crap. There it is. So you can buy this on Wildlight Publications website. So this the front cover, Rose made this out of like string and I think like lint from our dryer. And I have the original version without any of the like words and stuff framed in my office at work. But it's like a cool, almost like I Spy kind of esque vibe to it. Yeah, I just thought it was super cool and like unique. So yeah, there's the opening, kind of like allow the snare drum stick to freely bounce. The singing is like notated, but I don't care if you like transpose it or anything like that. There's the muted gong with the regular gongs. This is how I notated the tremolo effect on the drum head at the pressing, if you will. Yeah. Hannah played with an opera gong on the muted gong. And if you hit it in the center, it gave like a really high pitch sound that was kind of cool. So I like that for the accent there. That was a cool little like collaborative moment where Hannah was like, "Hey, I'm doing this. Do you like it?" And I was like, "Yes." Yeah, that's pretty much it. Lots of words in the score. Oh, the random Easter egg is this. I have no idea why there's a number 3 here. There just is. So yeah, random 3. Yeah, so that's mesmerism, and a lot of words. So, any thoughts, questions, concerns?
It's interesting that you mentioned the noble snare.
Yeah.
Because there's one of them by Alvin Lucier that is about like pointing like sine wave generators at a snare drum.
Wait, really?
Yeah, that's about like resonating, but it's like a much more sound art y type thing.
Yeah.
I'm planning on doing it this spring, which is why it's on my brain, because I'm in an electroacoustic class, so I have
What
access.
volume is that in?
Oh,
'Cause I think I
Either
only own 3 and 4.
it's either in the first or the third. It might be in the first one. I have the PDF if you're so inclined to look at it. I don't
I
have it
might
on
be
my computer.
interested later. Yeah. I need to buy the rest of them just before for some reason they're like inaccessible or whatever. But yeah,
Yeah, we just have them at the library here. So
nice.
it's like incredibly specific about like these hertz values too. So
Yeah.
yeah, this piece more reminds me of that like Alyssa Weinberg piece called Ember 2.
Yeah, I'm familiar. I've heard it, I think, once or twice. Did we talk about that piece on here? Maybe it was mentioned.
Oh, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think we've talked about maybe another of her pieces, and we've mentioned Ember, but because there's Ember and Ember 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
I just have to say this. I remember when I was performing this piece, it's crazy how directional when you're singing you have to be to get the snares to respond.
Yeah.
That's just like not something that I thought about. But even watching that video again, if you like listen really closely, you can hear that the snare sound at the end when I'm trying to hit the gongs, if I like when I turn to look barely and my head just slightly tips, the sound is not as loud as when your voice is directly over it. And I remember that being something that we talked about a lot. Also because the difference between humming with your mouth closed and like trying to sing with your mouth open, you get different responses to the snare.
Yeah.
It was just like, it's so interesting because we hear it resonating all the time in band or orchestra, and so we just think that it's like an easy thing to accomplish.
Yeah.
But then you start getting into the intricacies of it, and it's wild how the snares respond. It's not always how you think.
I want to say that, like, so this piece and Flugel Vibe, in a way, I'm like, I don't know. I've kind of realized that I think like trying to find humor in like writing music, even if, especially for music that's like on a concert stage, or like having some sort of humoristic element is like important to me. Cause like my mind did go to like in band classes, like, you didn't turn the snares off. And it's like, who the cares? Like, no one hears it. The only people that hear it are the people that are used to hearing it. And when it's like really intense, it's like grating. But like, what if that's the point, is that it's like it's not grating anymore, but it's like supposed to be present, so it's kind of fun. And then Political Vibe is obviously a joke on an adult cartoon, but yeah. Hannah, I also am just like so impressed that you memorized that piece, because when I played it, I was like, I have to read this. And I did it, like, I did so badly. But it's because you have to negotiate so much space, right? It's hard.
So actually, that video I do not have it memorized in.
Oh,
So there was a really small table at OSU
that's
that
right.
I was able to put the music on so that it was out of the shot, because the problem when I was trying to record it was that the music stand was in the way, so you couldn't see anything I was doing.
Yep.
And so it's not memorized. And if you watch it, you can see I'm constantly looking down because I'm looking at the music.
Right. Yeah. I also remember you were like, yeah, it'd be great if it was like 4 minutes long, and it's like 7. Oh, Jesus.
Where's this table? I'm like trying to look for it now.
I don't think it's
not in
there.
the shot.
Yeah,
I
I think Hannah was clever.
I was able to get it out of the shot, but I could still read the music.
That's insane.
Yes. The things we do for recording. Ridiculous.
It was definitely, I remember like watching you play it, like when I came up to Ohio State right before your recital, and I was just hype as hell that it worked, and that like Krieger and Powell weren't like, nope, this is lame. They were both like, yeah, this is fine. And I'm like, okay, great. I'm like really self-conscious about like composition and all that kind of stuff anyway, but this was like this was a fun one. And like, I think I delivered you the copy, and you were like, there was like something about like the more rhythmic section. It was like, hey, this makes more sense in 3/4. And I was like, cool, I'll make that change. And I think like there were a couple of other like really small changes, but outside of that, it was like a very much a, here you go, draft 1. Yeah. So
Yes, the only change was that thing. I think it was in 4/4, and I just started playing it, and I was like, "This feels like it's in 3, and it would be so much easier to read in 3."
And
So,
it was. It was. Yeah. So it was fun. Also, like you were talking about this, like leaning over to sing and like the directionality of it. Like when I first started improvising to like come up with the piece, I was like, okay, where you put the gongs over the drum matters so much. Because and like the size of the gong, if it's not big enough, it will never ever resonate with the snares unless they're like directly over the snare, like the wires themselves. So like any sort of really high pitched gong didn't really work. So it had to be like big lumbering gongs, which is like, oh, it's such a pain. Um, but I bought like 4 of those Steve Weiss gong holders so I could play that piece. Um, anyway, yeah. So thanks for asking me to write it because it was fun. So
it was sweet.
yeah.
Thank God Ohio State had the gongs it did, or it would not have worked. Because I tried so many, and those were the ones that worked.
You know, maybe that's why people haven't purchased this piece. Is because they don't want to buy a bunch of guns. Uh,
Yeah.
Jesus. Anyway, not that that fucking matters. All right. Yeah, that's all I got. Hannah, I'll pass the mic to you.
Okay, so I submitted Broken Sweet, which is the piece that Joseph mentioned I wrote for him. And then I also submitted Cracks in the Pavement, which is a piece I wrote for 4 percussionists and 2 vocalists. Which one do y'all want to start with?
Let's go with Cracks in the Pavement.
Okay, so Joseph, can I ask you to share the video? I'll talk about it while you're looking for it.
I got it pulled up already.
Awesome, thank you. So
Yeah.
this piece was the first piece that I wrote when I was taking composition lessons at Ohio State. So up until this point, I'd written things, but I hadn't taken lessons. And I got to take lessons with Michael Rene Torres. He's the saxophone and composition teacher at Ohio State. And he was amazing. I feel like not only did he help me with composition, but he also gave me more information about music history than I got in my music history classes, which was wild. So shout out to him. But this piece actually started as a poem that I wrote after I had, when was this? I guess this was going into the second year of my master's degree. And I was really sad, just to be honest. I was really sad, and I decided to write this poem that kind of like, for me at the time, captured how I was feeling. And then from there, I had started talking to Professor Torres, and I decided to take this poem and turn it into a piece. So the way it works is that every line of the poem is accompanied by music. So there's 6 lines of the poem, there's 6 sections of the piece. I use a lot of extended techniques, both on the marimba and in the voice. And when I was composing this piece, the way I did it is I started by just improvising on marimba and then improvising with my own voice and then cutting those sound files up and putting them into GarageBand to kind of get a layout of the sound I was looking for. And then from there, I notated it. And we can look at a score after we watch some of the video. So, Joseph, if you could just like jump around, like let's listen to like 30 seconds one place, 30 seconds another place. And yeah.
Cracks in the pavement, like shattered glass, or a black widow's web.
Do you want me to skip forward or? All right, cool. Let's go.
Try like 3 minutes in.
Oh, by the way, I like the sound of blowing air into the pipe.
I didn't even know how to comment on that video. That's funny.
It cracked me up.
Greet me each day, constant and unchanging.
Okay, I think we can move on. Try like 5:30.
Okay. Got any more other spots here?
Yeah, go to there.
Okay.
That one.
To dissipate.
And you can just let this one play through and that'll be the last one.
Sick.
Yeah. Huh. Bruh. Huh. Huh. Yeah. Bruh. Do. Yeah. Huh. Pew. Bruh. Huh. Yeah. Do. Yeah. Pew. Eh. The pavement is constant. You are not.
Okay. Sorry about that. I had to leave work.
You're good. We were just listening.
So, the movement you heard right before the starting of that last one was snow caresses the pavement, filling the fractures with frost. So it was supposed to be like snow themed. And then the one before that was about fall. Yeah. But it was really fun getting to write this piece and then perform it. Yeah, do you all have any comments or questions before I dive into some other things about it?
I just laughed at the fact that Ben Kirker is wearing a scarf in the recording. Kills me.
We
But
all made fun of him for that scarf.
yeah,
And he said, "This is my pop of color." And I said, "Whatever, man."
I love it. Yeah. I just like how the vocalists become percussionists in some ways with like the more like syllabic like sound effects. Like almost like Foley kind of sounds they make, and then like the percussionists at times are like mimicking that, or isn't there parts where like well they speak the actual poem, which I don't know, you kind of just are like blending the line between like it makes it feel like a sextet versus like a quartet and a duo, which I really appreciate. So
Yeah, that was one of the most interesting things about writing this work. So there are no words in the entire piece, minus what is spoken. And the speaking is actually passed around by player. I have it written out where there's 6 players, there's 6 sections of the piece. And so every player gets a line. And that's because I didn't want like vocal lines to just be with the vocalists. And I wanted it to be seen as like one ensemble. And I even put in the program notes that like if for some reason you can't find vocalists, 2 members of the ensemble could sing the vocal parts, but that I prefer that you have 2 vocalists there, if that makes sense. But I think them being more percussive just came about inherently because with me being a percussionist and I sang through all the parts, it was a lot of like, oh, well, what timbres can I create with my voice? And I was thinking of my voice a lot like a percussion instrument. What was interesting about this, though, was when we had the vocalists come, I guess they were like not aware their voice could do these things because we did have conversation. First of all, I was supposed to have a totally different set of vocalists for this piece, and they backed out because they were scared, and that's okay. That happens. So I was super grateful for these 2 vocalists for coming in and like fully diving into it and being willing to try everything. But there definitely was hesitation of like, I don't know if this is actually possible for me to do. And I'm like, don't worry, I'm not a trained vocalist and I could do it. So I think it's possible. But I think it just like that experience to me speaks to the fact that no matter what your instrument is, we all like have this box that we put our instrument in, and there are things outside of the box that should be in the box of possibilities, but we're just not aware of them because of our training.
I also love the I love the marimba as like a like unifying element between the four percussionists, and that they are staged in various ways surrounding it, but it's like this, yeah, it looks like a table, but it's not, but it's kind of treated like one, you know. um I don't know, like I don't know why I'm like thinking of that again. I think it's kind of funny, and like again tells you like, hey, you put the marimba in this box of like, don't play on it with rubber mallets, like don't scrape the resonators, like be careful. And it's like, nope, we're gonna do all these things because guess what? They sound so cool. We're gonna blow into it because it's a big set of pipes, you know. So
Yeah, this piece rocks. I like it. I like the vocal writing, and I encountered the same problem frequently, not just with vocals, but with other people, where it's like they'll like I was writing this cello solo over the summer, and I had access to like a cello. So as a percussionist, I was doing very not cello things to it. Yeah, yeah. I tried to avoid hitting it because I feel like that was too on the nose. They'd be like, okay. Um, but you know, doing things like retuning while you're playing, which fun fact doesn't work because the pegs in cellos, if you retune them a little bit, they like pop out, which I didn't know. So that's a fun fact. Um, but like all these natural harmonics and things that were quite quick, and they were like, I don't know if this is possible. And I was like, well, I mean, I did it like doing this, and I have no idea how to play cello, so it must be possible in some capacity. So I'm glad that other people are encountering this because I thought I was just an insane person encountering that phenomenon, and I was like, maybe this isn't possible, and I'm just dumb.
I think it means we're doing something right.
Yeah,
Cause like we want music to continue to evolve. This is a way to do it, is like push the boundaries. What can it do?
yeah. I just love, and the vocal ratings to prove that is so cool. Like it's so like it makes sense with my percussion brain, which makes me very happy. And how did you like convince them to do it, or did they just have a couple passes and then they were like okay with it after they did it?
I think like once I showed them how to do it and like explained how I was doing it, I think that helped them a lot. Cause this is gonna sound funny, but when I used to go to the mosque as a kid for Sunday school, we would have these like little posters up on the wall of like the inside of your throat, because when you're like speaking Arabic, they use different parts of their like mouth to get the correct sounds. And so I had always like seen that and just thought, oh yeah, everybody like knows
Whoa.
this photo. It's everywhere. No, it's not everywhere. This is a particular experience I've had. And so I think that like that experience for me of like, oh, this syllable in Arabic you say this way and it's said with this part of your mouth. I think that was helpful for me being like, oh, this sound I'm making is in this part of my mouth. Because it's something that I've been thinking about since I was a kid and just didn't realize that it could translate to vocal music.
Yeah, that's sick. I'm
Yeah.
in the market for writing a vocal piece soon, as soon as someone asks me to. So a chamber, like those chamber groups, kind of like the Lorelei ensemble that I've seen going around. That's a very attractive idea to me. So nice. That's good to hear.
there's
You're in
like
Massachusetts, right?
Yeah, in Boston.
Okay. There's some vocal ensembles around there, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, the trick is getting them to like pay attention to me.
That's true.
there's one other like cohesive element to this that I'm just now like I just blew my own mind in making this connection that maybe is not actually there. But I was like, okay, I'm like, okay, yeah, you got the vocalist, you got the marimba, but what's the other instrument that is like played constantly? It's singing bowls, right? Like another like singing, like percussive vocal music. Like the unifier is this like resonating singing bowl. I don't know. Maybe I'm grasping at thin air, but I was like, what? I also love that sound. And like, again, another like cool use for those instruments that you buy to play Yijing. You spend $200 on. So yeah. Anyway, not that I did that recently.
You actually also, speaking of things you play, there's also a moment where it's Ben's part, Ben Kurger. He takes 4 mallets and I think I have a pair here. I don't have a pair here. But you take them and you like do 2 independent rolls between your hands on the mallets. And it creates this really cool like rain sound. Yes, Joseph, please show us. Yes. And I love this sound. Here,
Like
yeah, play it
this?
for us.
Like I guess it
Yes.
matters like how you hold them. But yeah, I hear that. That's pretty sick.
Yeah, and I like that sound because of its inconsistency. It really does make it sound like rain, in my opinion.
I
Or
hear it.
like patters on the window. And I don't know. I just really like that sound. I want someone else to use that sound. It's like one of my favorite sounds in the piece. I've been thinking about it a lot recently.
I think this piece gets to like I remember leaving your recital when you played this. Like obviously I was jazzed when you played Mesmerism and I was like, woo, and like everything else in the program was like, yes. But I remember like going to the airport after hearing you play this piece, and I was just like, I'm inspired, like quite frankly, because it is just like there were some sounds that I'm like, okay, like the nylon brush, like Vespertine, love it, love that that is getting used again, and that's the point. Is like, why does it have to be a like, oh, this person used this like one time, and it's like so it not that there's like a written rule that no one else can use like the Vespertine brush mallet or like Vespertine brush sound, like one of them, but it's like no, it has it's a cool sound, like let's continue to use it. And like percussionists I feel like get fixated on like I don't know, like certain things are like uh okay, like a muted snare drum solo, like Mudra. Like let's just keep doing that. And I'm like, why don't you try something else? Or like go back to this one idea that somebody fed specific hertz into a snare drum as a resonating body. Can anyone do anything else with that? And like, or this like pitter patter effect with the mallet shafts, even like riding with the edges of the bars on marimba. I'm like, nobody really does that anymore. There's that there's a Mike Burrett solo in the Mark Bozeman book that does it, and it's like very simple and effective. And I'm like, oh, I like this. It's like achievable for a young player, and like has a different timbre. Like, cool. Like, someone should do more of that. Or like playing with brushes on the marimba. But I don't know. Maybe just Andy Akiho, like let him keep doing what he's doing. But
I stole a lot of the techniques in the piece. Like the vocal stuff. If someone were like, what were your inspirations for the vocal stuff? Room Full of Teeth, Caroline Shaw's Partita for Voices definitely was like a huge inspiration for that. Also, this song by Florence and the Machine called Heaven Is Here that she recorded during COVID. It's like all just vocal sounds that she's using to create the instrumental sounds, and then she has her song on top of it that she's singing. But like with those ones, like I didn't really steal any specific techniques, but like hearing that definitely like was inspiration. But the things I did steal, the xylophone mallet that I'm rubbing against the bars, that's from Tonya Ko's Blue Skin of the Sea. I think it's movement 2. She takes the xylophone mallets and rubs them against the bars. Well, rub isn't even the right word. You more just like barely, no pressure. You just like glide them across. Because the moment you put pressure, actually the sound goes away. And it creates like these really cool overtones on the instrument. And so I'd seen that before and I was like, oh, let me reuse that. And then Christopher Dean, because of all the stuff you talked about in your lecture recital, was like a big inspiration. So like the nylon brushes, the blowing into the resonators, all that stuff was like Christopher Dean inspired. Even like the leaf movement where I'm like going digga 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 digga. Like, even though that's not the same thing as Vespertine, very much in that moment I was like, okay, I kind of want this to have a Vespertine feel to it. How do I do that? So I don't know. Maybe I'm just a thief, but I think I used them all in a really good way. So it was fun.
I mean, I feel like it's just makes sense. It's just natural to like do that, right? Like I think all the pieces today have like a genesis point that's like clearly identifiable, whether or not we say it or it's just orally. And then you move forward from there and you like take what you need. Yeah. I think it's just refreshing to also see like a marimba quartet. Like you can call this a marimba quartet in a way, right? I would say that's like not like groove oriented or like focused on just um like layering harmony or dovetailing lines. I don't know. It's very refreshing and like even though it borrows from like clearly identifiable sources, like you do it in a very original and like in a way that's very original and organic and thoughtful. So I love this piece. Is anybody else playing it? Have you heard of any groups playing it yet? Okay. Gotcha.
No, I don't know anyone that's playing it, but that's okay. Yeah, going back to the marimba quartet thing, I think we've talked about this before, but I just want it on the record that I just feel like a lot of the times, even percussionists sometimes just write for everything in the kitchen sink. And I think there's a lot to be said about let me take this one instrument and see how much I can do with it. And I don't need 4 marimbas to play this piece. And you don't even need a 5 octave. You just need a 4 and a third. And I think that makes it more accessible and expands the 4 and a third rep, which I think is important. So, yeah.
Yeah, preach. Hard agree with all of that. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, 5 octave rep is awesome. I'm playing 5 octave rep and I love it, but when you can only afford a 4 and a third marimba, you need rep for it. So there's that too. Okay, do we want to move on to the next one?
Let's do it.
Sweet. Okay, so this next one is called Broken Sweet. I wrote this for Joseph because I remember how this started. This started actually as a totally different piece because I was pissed. I can say this on record, I don't care. I was pissed at the Ohio State administration for how they had dealt with an issue on campus. And that storyline just continued the rest of my time at Ohio State. And it's continued here. All colleges just have issues with administration. And so I was really fired up about it. And I was like, Joseph, I really want to write a piece about this. Joseph was like, well, how about you write me a piece and I'll play it? And I said, oh, okay. And then I sat down and started thinking about it and totally didn't write a piece about what I was angry about and wrote Broken Sweet instead. So this piece also uses text and was inspired by I had just done like my final project in I think a music history class on Parade, which is a play by Jean Cocteau and has music by Eric Satie. What's really cool about that piece and something that we don't really talk about is that it uses a bottle xylophone. So there's a like chromatic bottle xylophone in that piece, and for some reason we just don't talk about the fact that that piece is there, because if you look at it, like that is used significantly earlier than some of the other works that we see as like the first percussion works with, but maybe because it's found objects it's different. I don't know. I'm not the historian. But I had like done a bunch of reading on the Dada movement and really liked the idea that art could be made out of things that aren't considered art. And so I just thought, like in percussion, what is the thing that we don't consider like good sounds anymore? And that was broken instruments. So, you know, you crack a marimba bar, oh, that bar's bad. A head of a snare drum tears, oh, that's like a bad head. Or like if you play it too much and then it becomes a detune. And so I wrote this piece called Broken Suite, which is open instrumentation for broken instruments. And I have like a whole thing in the score about like what counts as a broken instrument. You're not allowed to break any instruments to play this piece, stuff like that. And then there's text that goes along with it that are both definitions of the word broken, and then also the last movement is like my commentary on those definitions. So if we can hear just like snippets of each movement, that'd be great.
Broken. 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 Broken.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How did you get 30?
With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought.
Jesus. Well, I was going to say that was a good segue because I said fractured, and now we're on to the second movement. I'm sorry, I could just remember how much this like would frustrate the shit out of me when I would like just play the wrong thing or like break. And that's just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe like I remember recording this and being like, wow, that was a really good take of that whole part. Oh man. Sorry. We go to the last movement. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Broke N. Broke N. These things are broken. Fractured or damaged and no longer in working order. Made weak or infirm, not functioning properly. Not complete or full, damaged. Not functioning, weak. Is this broken? Damaged? Yes. But functioning. Maybe a better definition is changing direction abruptly.
I think that's good. I hope you all really appreciated my text painting at that moment, changing direction. It went down, down, and then it went up, down, up. Anyway,
I totally like I remember everything that was going on around the time of recording this. It just oh man. No wonder I don't remember how like I don't know. This I've never done a like theater more like theatrical like percussion piece and like did not remember looking directly at the camera. Like that is fire. Oh man, I love this piece.
well,
Jeez.
that's because in the score, I say, like, you got to pick up the woodblock and address the audience. Yeah.
This is the best thing I've seen this month. I feel like ashamed because I actually really like the cracked woodblock sound. Like it's like a really attractive sound to me. It's so good. And I was like, for the first like 10 seconds, I was like, oh no, that woodblock is cracked. And then like the rest of the piece, I was like, this is a great sound. It's like clicky and perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's killer. And Hannah got 3 cracked wood blocks from Susan Powell, right? She just had some, so she was like, because Hannah asked me, she was like, text me one day, she's like, give me every piece of equipment that you have that is broken in some way. And I was like, here you go. I like broken bongos. The bells are a set of 4 old Deegan dinner chimes that I found here in North Carolina when I was visiting Rose one day. And they're like missing the resonating body and the string was broken, but otherwise they sound really good. They're just not, they're like in tune with each other, but like not the A flat major triad they play ain't gonna be in tune with any other keyboard.
They
So-
also had a little buzz to them that I liked. It's like just a little buzz. I was like, ooh, this is nice. Yeah. But speaking to your
That's
point, Trigby, like, I think that was the coolest part of this process is like those marimba bars are also cracked, but in that context, they do not sound cracked at all once you get into the piece. Like at first you're like, what the heck is this? But as it goes, you're like, oh, actually they all work together.
I love them so much. And like now I'm like rethinking because we've thrown out a lot of marimba bars. And my undergrad, I'm like, and is it like aleatoric in the sense that like those pitches can be just like any 3 marimba bars. That's kind of cool because then the harmony is also kind of like just up to whatever you have lying around too.
I don't
Well,
even think
let
they have to
me-
be marimba bars.
They don't. Let me show you how I did it in the score. Okay, this is gonna be weird because I'm gonna share my screen and it's gonna be. Let's see if I can find the right screen I want to share. Where is it? Broken Sweet. This one. This is the one I want to share. Are you seeing it or no?
No.
Dang it! Can't share your screen.
There's
Well-
also so much deep cut lore to the recording. Trig V, so you may have noticed that between movement 1 and 2 we switch sides, and then back for movement 3. Movement 2 is like so much more difficult from just like a chops perspective, that like I couldn't get a good take of movement 2 on the same day that we did movement 1 and 3. So I came back wearing the same outfit, but like I have stumble in movement 2, and I was using a broken piece of a flower pot because I broke a bunch of flower pots playing scavenger music at OSU, and we were using these broken flower pot pieces because they sounded good, and then eventually I think the flower pot we were using Hannah just like bit the dust.
It
So I
did.
had this cowbell that Rose bought me that's rusted and cracked, and I pulled that out, and it was like, why didn't we use this from the beginning? This
Get 'em.
sounds good. And then like we were playing, I got to take a movement 2, and then I look at the table that I was playing on, it's just covered in rust, just like rust particles everywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think
make-
actually what happened was that we were recording movement 2. We had recorded the other 2 on the first day, and we were recording movement 2, and it was just not working. And then during one of the takes, I think it was like perfect, and then all of a sudden you broke the flower pot, and we were like, well, we've already recorded 1 and 3, so what are we gonna do? We can't just have like this broken flower pot in movement 2, but not in movement 3. So we just totally replaced it and did a whole new recording session.
I have to go back and check, but I think on my recital, I was like playing on the flower pot piece and it broke like mid recital. So the pitch goes from or like raised. It changed in a very noticeable way all of a sudden. And I was like, oh, this works.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Okay, so I have the score pulled up. You can see it? Yeah? Okay,
Yeah.
great. So it's open, like everything is open instrumentation. So if you look at the percussion key, you'll see that there's like this one of a kind. So you need one object that's just one of a kind. Like it only sounds like itself. And then you have another object next to it that's 2 of a kind, which is the high one is low. It's notated on the bottom and the low sound is notated on the top. That's because when you're playing it ends up being left hand or right hand. So that's why that's that way. But when I'm talking of a kind, I mean that they need to have like a similar timbre quality to them. So the one of a kind was the flower pot that became the cowbell. 2 of a kind were the wood blocks, and then 3 of a kind. And I have them in pitch order, so you need to have like high to low for the marimba bars. And then those items, if you look at the bottom, it says articulate, rhythmic, and then varying timbres. So those 3 different categories, they need to be articulate, they need to be rhythmic, and then the timbres between the 3 categories should vary. And then the last one, which is the 4 of a kind, needs to be resonant, melodic, and they need to be of the same timbre. So that was my way to make it open instrumentation, because I doubt somebody else has 3 broken marimba bars, 2 cracked wood blocks, and a cowbell, plus a set of 4 deacon dinner chimes that are broken. So
Just
this
go on eBay and you can find the last set of instruments pretty easy.
so that's how I dealt with that. And then the first movement's all improvisatory. So there are like ideas marked out. Well, I should say it's half improvisatory, half written. So there are ideas written out, and then there are sections where it's like you can improvise on this theme. Here's the ostinato you do, and then you improvise from either movement 2 or movement 3. And I think I have something in the piece that says like movement 2 and movement 3 can be played on their own. So if people just want to play a movement, they can. But movement 1 must be played with either movement 2 or movement 3. It cannot be played on its own since it's based on the other two movements. I hope that answers your question, Trigby.
Yeah. So these ranges don't indicate like actual like tessitura. They're just kind of like treble and bass just to show like different percussion air like separation.
Correct. I think now that you mention it, maybe I should just get rid of the treble and bass so it's not confusing anymore. Because if I let me go to a different page of the score. Like here, I just use percussion clef.
Oh,
So four of a kind's on bottom, and then the other voices are all on top.
I see.
Yeah.
Cool. Is there any like process, or is it just kind of like pattern based?
This, so it's a palindrome actually, because my name's a palindrome, and so I'm kind of narcissistic and write a lot of palindrome pieces. So the piece starts. It also, yes, it is based on a pattern. So it's based on 4-3-2-1 because I also love mathematical summation equations. And so 4-3-2-1 is when you do the sum of n minus 1, and then there's like set parameters for what n is where when you would get something like this. And so I took the bottom idea 4-3-2-1 and then put something on top that I thought went with that pattern. And then from there we go into this new idea. And then somewhere in here, it's probably right here. Yeah, right here. So measure 55 is where it totally inverts. And I think I did it by, yeah. So I did, because there are different ways when you do palindrome form that you can invert it. And so I decided to do it note for note. And so it ends up changing all of the rhythms so that they sound different, but it's actually the same thing, which is cool.
Yeah, when we listened to it just a second ago, we didn't get to the palindrome version of the
Beginning,
but the bell pattern also descends.
Flips.
Ba-dum,
Right here.
bum, ba-dum, ba-dum,
Oh,
bum, ba-da, ba, which I found I think I found this section to be like the hardest one, like because I had to figure out some crazy sticking for the initial like flip when it's all 16th notes, but like once I just like shed that a ton, it was this that was kind of like the most difficult to like smooth out because it also is a palindrome dynamically, and then you fade out, and it was like, ah! And if I missed one bell, like ba-da-bum, ba-da-bum, God dang it. Like, but it was really fun. And I think like the listeners kind of like cued into the point by the end. They're like, oh, wait, this kind of sounds familiar, at least. Not maybe they're not like, oh, it's the same thing backwards, but they're like, this sounds like the beginning, but maybe different. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
Really?
Joseph played it really well too, which helped.
I didn't play it at tempo though. I was like, damn, 126 is burning.
Hey, you know what? That's because the computer can play everything right except for dynamics and the correct sounds. So as far as I'm concerned, the tempo you took, it's fine. Like, and also, I don't know, it might get messy if it was too much faster.
Yeah. No, I really like I think you started with the second movement, right? As far as like the composition goes.
Did I start with the second movement?
I don't know.
No, I think you're right. Yeah, I think I started with the second movement because I knew I wanted that one to be harder.
Yeah.
And then I think I wrote the third movement next, and I wrote the first movement last.
And that's what I really appreciated about the piece was like the progression, like the learning progression is nice in that like the second movement requires like a lot of shedding.
Nice.
And then the third, not quite as much, but still some like synchronization. And then the first is like okay, I know this piece now. Like, how can I get yada bum bum and got cat on together, or cat go cat and like by the end of it, the first movement was like really fun to play because I was just like, I know this chart. I know the hot licks, So yeah.
I like it because that makes it like not only is the piece about broken stuff, but like the process of composition was also broken. Like you did 2, 3, 1, and then yeah. So it's just like really interesting because that like I know there's like a huge debate in the composition world whether that's like process really can matters, and I think it does. Like it hugely is effective on like. Well, everyone knows that process matters, I think, but sometimes people fight over the degree through which it actually like can be heard or felt. And I think that it's 100%. So it's just like it's also just like a fun kind of like Easter egg, like you're committing to the idea of the piece to the point where you're literally like producing it in a way that's like out of order, which is really cool.
Yeah, that definitely was not like I didn't think that way. I was just like first movement, I wanted to be improvisatory. Second movement's gonna be a little more choppy. Last movement is gonna be like spoken word theatrical. And so I was like, okay, what do I need to get done first so Joseph can start working on it? I said the second movement, so that's where I started. And then from there, it just like after I'd finished that movement, I said, well, you can't really write an improvisatory movement until you know the main themes of both the movements that come after it that first movement's based on. So
Yeah, or like what you ended up doing timbrely, like with the third movement specifically, like, hey, this indication means to use like the shaft of the mallet. This one is like the glissando with the rubber mallet. And it's like, cool. I have multiple like timbres for just this one set of instruments, or like the slam effect. I'm like, I love that. Yeah. So yeah, the Stevens splash cluster, if you will, a la rhythmic caprice.
yep, that's where I stole that from. Just a big thief over here.
Lots of stealing today.
Yes, always. See, only good composers steal.
It's called flattery, okay?
Yeah,
Flatter Lee Stevens. Or don't.
that's true.
Yeah.
This would be great for me because I'm like in my tiny apartment and I'm always looking for like bite-sized apartment pieces to have that are not bone alphabet because that's never gonna happen. As much as I have tried, it's not gonna happen.
That's another thing that I think Hannah and I talked about was like I wanted to be. I hate big multi. Like I just said to you that I kind of want to play Anvil Chorus at some point in my life. I'm like, I will play Anvil Chorus when I can like set it up in an office for 12 months and shed it with earplugs in. But otherwise, like I'm like any multi piece I play is going to be like 4 to 5 surfaces max and like 2 pedals max. Like I practiced and played 2 Varese for like I just played it like on a practice pad in my apartment because it was like I just need to be able to go from here to here and here to here. Like this is not. It's more about the rhythms and dynamics and the music than it is like the playing it on the surfaces in some ways, which maybe is like disingenuous to multi percussion. But like this piece required a lot of practice like on the setup. But I literally like took that table from Ohio State and was like, this is mine. I'm gonna use it like all the time. And and like nobody cared. Like I think I left my setup in 059 or 059, that's South Carolina, in 125, and just like every now and then it'd be like, hey, we need the Yamaha table. And I'm like, okay, dump all my stuff off. Like, go ahead. But yeah, big multi, not a big fan. I also like that it's 3 movements, 3 very different movements in one setup. So
Yeah, it gives you very like portable piece vibes, which I love. Like the the Baby Bot, that piece by Andrea. I can't pronounce his last name, but he's a good friend of mine, and I love him. I know. He that has like that vibe. Like, have you seen that video of that? I don't remember what quartet it is, but they like section off their things, and it's like a melody that passes between the four of them. They all have kind of like a similar setup type thing, where it's like some non-resonance and like one muted like resonant, and it like passes and it has like these like colored lights, like panels that like light up. It's really cool, but it had like that kind of like grab and go, like stuff you would find like in a garage or junkyard too, that I really like. But it's like all tiny sounds, which are really cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's
love-
what's nice about sorry.
No, you got. I was just because I love Broken Sweep for that reason.
Yeah. That's what's nice about the open instrumentation thing is like, as Joseph said, like he had a pair of broken bongos. And so I had debated using those, but then decided not to. But if someone had just like a bunch of broken drums, or they wanted to use a broken drum sound, like have at it. The setup can be as big or as small as you want it to be.
You can pair this with Broken Drum by Matt Bergner. Does anyone know that piece?
Is that the break drum solo?
Yeah, with like electronics.
Yeah.
You should submit that for the next Mallets and Manuscripts meeting. That sounds
Oh, I
so
should.
cool.
I've been looking for one. I feel like all the repertoire I'm interested in is either stuff that literally everyone would know, or stuff that I'm not really sure is like worth really talking about because it's just like kind of similar to something that everyone would know. But
I'm
yeah,
cool
Broken
with-
Drum is.
I'm cool with you submitting both of those things.
Yes.
Like whether it's something like I would talk about Yellow After the Rain on this television show.
Yeah, I'll do Broken Drum next time. Maybe that'll be my Mallets Manuscript debut.
We'll do
submission.
that, and we'll do Yellow After the Rain by Gordon Peters.
I would
Shout
love
out
if you
Jay
submitted
Schneider.
that.
And then we should pair it with Yellow After the Acid Rain.
Wait, who wrote
is
that? Is
that?
that a Caleb Pickering thing? Because that sounds like something he would write.
I don't know who wrote it. It's just a hilarious.
Wait, no, I
Yeah.
remember this. Yeah.
Let's see who wrote it.
Oh
Yeah.
my god.
Yellow After the Acid Rain.
It's by Kyle Scully.
Uh, Wait, do you have it pulled up?
I do.
Okay.
Oh please.
Wait.
We're gonna watch it real quick.
Bonus fifth piece. We're
Bonus piece, yeah.
Yellow After the Acid Rain. Is this right up there with the? I showed you guys the Ray-Bans Guitar Hero video.
Oh, I fucking love that video.
Oh, this is the wrong one.
Pinky is
Dude.
like this the entire time he's playing.
He gets to the temple block lick, and it's like.
Yeah, I love it because it like he messes it up like halfway through, and then the sound cuts out because he's not playing the notes.
That's
So
so-
funny.
Okay, can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is
Bass
awesome.
drum, marimba, 5 octave.
Can you hear it?
No. Are you sharing the audio tab?
Probably not. I'm listening to it. It's hilarious.
Okay. Wait. Should we? Yeah, wait. We should listen to this so that the rest of the YouTube. Yes, this.
YouTubeception.
How do
God.
I do this?
Here, do you want to send me the link and I'll share it?
Yeah, I think that's probably the best thing to do.
Sick. Oh,
I
man.
also love that he's got the music. It just makes me so happy.
Oh, along with the score.
Yes, it's a score. Follow along. Great.
Did you send it in the chat?
Oh shoot, no, I sent it to
Oh,
your
I got it, I got it.
phone.
I got it.
I'm old school over here. I said I had to send you something. I gotta text it.
Let me text it to you. All right, here we go. Y'all ain't ready. I'm not ready.
I'm not ready.
All right.
So fast.
Where did the score go?
You gotta buy the music to see what it's written as.
That's honestly so incredible, like a masterpiece. Yeah, wow. On that note, thanks everybody. Jesus Christ. Hopefully you enjoyed that last composition by somebody. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna stop recording. We'll see you in October. All right. Recording.
Oh my god. You can't say that that is not a musical masterpiece. If someone were to put Yell After the Rain in that composition on the same recital, I would go to it.
You heard
I
it
want to
here.
see it.